My name is Thomas Hale. Boston was supposed to be the end of running, a city of noise, concrete, people, a place where shadows are short and the cold stays outside. I was wrong. I returned in late February. The city looked smaller than I remembered. Buildings leaned closer together, streets narrowed, sky pressed low and gray. I rented the same cramped room in the North End boarding house. Same narrow stairs that creaked under every step. Same smell of damp plaster and boiled cabbage drifting from the kitchen below. The landlady barely recognized me until I paid 2 months in advance in cash. She handed me the key without a word. I climbed the stairs, locked the door behind me, drew the heavy blinds until not a crack of daylight remained. I sat on the edge of the bed, stared at the floor for nearly an hour. The revolver lay on the nightstand, one bullet left, etched with the sign. The dagger rested beside it, still faintly warm to the touch, still hungry. The pendant from Celine was gone. Only the broken chain remained on the pillow the morning after I arrived. The black stone missing. I tried to rest. For 4 days I barely left the room. I ate cold canned soup straight from the tin, drank tap water that tasted of iron and old pipes, kept the lights off most of the time, listened to the city outside, cars, horns, voices, footsteps on the sidewalk below. Normal sounds, human sounds. But the silence inside the room was wrong. Too thick, too heavy, like the air itself was waiting. On the 5th night, the scratching began. Soft, dry, persistent. Tiny claws scraping wood under the baseboard near the window. Slow circles, patient circles. I told myself it was rats. Old building, old pipes, old everything. But the scratching didn't stop. It moved. From the baseboard to the wall, from the wall to the ceiling, from the ceiling to the door frame. Always the same rhythm. Slow, deliberate, patient. On the 6th night, I sat up in bed, listened, scrape, scrape, pause, scrape, scrape, pause. I lit the lamp. The room looked ordinary. Peeling wallpaper, cracked ceiling, single chair, single bed. The scratching stopped. I exhaled, turned off the light. It started again. Closer now, directly beneath the floorboards under my bed. I didn't sleep. Next morning, I left the room for the first time in days. Needed air. Needed to move. I walked the narrow streets of the North End, between old brick buildings that leaned toward each other like conspirators. Through alleys so tight the walls almost touched my shoulders. The city felt different now. Every shadow deeper. Every doorway darker. Every rat that scurried across the pavement made me flinch. I found the first victim 2 blocks from my boarding house, in a narrow passage between tenements. A homeless man curled against the wall, throat torn open, not cut, torn. Ragged wound as if something chewed through the flesh, eyes missing, 2 perfect bloody sockets staring upward. On his chest, the black rat, size of a cat, fur matted with blood, eyes like polished obsidian. It sat watching the lens, pinned the coat with a rusty nail. A note, handwritten in shaky black ink. The witch hungers. I tore it down, burned it in the alley. Flames reflected in the rat's eyes before it vanished into a drain. I started walking faster. That night, I prowled the city, from the north end to the waterfront, through Chinatown, through the old leather district, between buildings so old they leaned toward each other like conspirators. I searched alleys, doorways, abandoned lots. I found 4 more bodies before dawn, all the same, throats torn open, eyes missing. The black rat present at every scene, on the chest, on a fire escape above, in the corner watching. Each body had a note. First, Keziah waits. Second, the familiar is hungry. Third, give me the marked hand. Fourth, the Sabbath calls. I returned to my room at sunrise, locked the door, sat in the chair with the revolver in my lap. The scratching started again at dusk. This time, it was directly under the floorboards beneath my feet. Then the voice came, old, cracked, ancient. Thomas. Keziah Mason. I didn't answer. The voice whispered through the cracks in the floor. You cannot hide forever, child. The sign called me back from the abyss. Nyarlathotep sent me. I walked the dark paths. I crossed the thresholds. I returned for you. A pause. Your blood, just a drop, from the hand that bears the sign. Give it to Brown Jenkin, and the dreams will end. The footsteps will stop. The cold will leave you. You will be free to serve. The scratching intensified, frenzied, claws digging into wood, trying to break through. I stood up, walked to the center of the room. The voice continued, softer now, almost coaxing. The sleeper dreams, the walker walks. The king waits in Carcosa, but Nyarlathotep, he collects, he gathers, he plays, and you are part of the game now. I looked down at the floorboards, a single drop of black blood, mine, had seeped from under my fingernail. It fell, hit the wood, sizzled. The scratching stopped. Silence. Then a single, soft tap, like a small paw against the floor. The voice whispered one last time. Thank you, child. Sleep now. Rest. The Sabbath awaits. We will speak again soon. I sat on the bed, revolver in my lap, dagger beside me. The scratching faded, the cold eased, just a little. The throb in my chest slowed. I closed my eyes, and I fell. Not into sleep, into something deeper. There was no transition, no fade. One moment, the bed, the room, the scratching. The next, I was elsewhere. The floor beneath me was stone, black, polished. yet it refused to remain stone. It folded into itself at angles that had no right to exist. It curved inward while simultaneously curving outward. It intersected itself in places where intersection should have been impossible. One step forward placed my foot behind me. One step backward placed me above my own head. The surface beneath me was at once convex, concave, flat, and spiraled into a fourth direction that my mind rejected. Walls did not rise. They collapsed inward while expanding outward. They met at vertices that were also edges, that were also faces. One wall was simultaneously in front of me and behind me and above me and inside me. Another wall folded through my body without piercing skin. I felt it pass through my ribs, my lungs, my heart, yet I remained whole. The ceiling was the floor. The floor was the sky. The sky was a single point that stretched into infinity in directions that negated each other. Air did not move. It folded. It tasted of sulfur, old blood, wet fur, decaying roses, ozone, and something sweeter, like fruit that had never been fruit, but remembered being fruit in a world that never existed. Voices rose, not from throats, not from mouths, from angles, from folds, from the places where space had been broken on purpose, chanting, low, rhythmic, in a language that made my teeth ache and my tongue taste copper and my mind fold in on itself like wet paper. Figures moved, but movement was a lie. They were in all places at once and in none. Their bodies did not twist. They were the twist. Arms became legs, became torsos, became heads, became nothing, became everything. They danced in vectors that negated themselves. They stepped into Klein bottles. They existed in tesseracts that folded into Klein bottles that folded into impossible knots. In the center, an altar, black stone, pitted, stained with layers of blood, black, brown, red, yellow, violet, green, that was not green. The altar itself was wrong. Its edges met at angles greater than 360 degrees and less than zero. Its surface was simultaneously convex, concave, saddle-shaped, and spiraled into a fifth dimension that my mind refused to acknowledge. Looking at it made my vision tear. Looking away made the tear follow me. On the altar, a child, not older than 5, bound with yellow cords that moved like living veins, skin pale, eyes wide, mouth open in a scream that never left the throat, because the throat was already folded into the fourth wall. Keziah stood over it, old, bent, hair wild gray, eyes burning coals. Brown Jenkin perched on her shoulder, huge black rat with human face, tiny human hands, tiny human teeth, tiny human voice, whispering lines from the play in perfect, childish English. Yet the voice came from every direction at once, including inside my skull. The chanting grew louder. Figures danced. Their bodies were not bodies. They were intersections. They were self-negations. Arms elongated into lines that looped back into their own torsos, heads rotated in directions that had no name and no number. Legs stepped through their own chests while remaining outside. Torsos intersected themselves like impossible knots that tightened with every breath I took. They moved in Mobius directions. They passed through each other without collision. Yet I felt every impact in my spine. The air shimmered. A tear opened, not in front of me, not behind me, inside me. Through the tear, I saw, for one heartbeat, twin black suns sinking behind a lake of dead mercury. towers leaning at angles that made my mind bleed, yellow silk flapping in a wind that should not exist here. Then the tear widened, and I saw him, Nyarlathotep, not as a figure, as a shadow that was everywhere, a darkness that moved between the angles, a presence that laughed without sound, a promise that was not spoken. He was the tear, he was the chant, he was the blood on the altar, he was the child's scream that never came out, he was the geometry that broke me. Keziah raised a silver knife. The blade caught light that wasn't there. The child's scream finally broke free, high, thin, impossible, and folded back into itself until it became silence. Brown Jenkin leaped from her shoulder, landed on the child's chest. Tiny human hands pressed against the skin. Tiny human teeth sank into the throat. Blood flowed, not red, not black, colors that should not mix. Yellow, violet, green that was not green. It flowed upward, defying gravity, into the tear. The chanting became a single note, a sound that vibrated in my skull, in my teeth, in my veins. The yellow light in my arm flared, hot, painful. The crescent moon mark on my forearm burned like acid. Keziah turned her head, looked directly at me. Her eyes were not eyes. They were doors. Doors to places where light dies. Doors to places where angles devour. She smiled, and the smile stretched and stretched until it filled the tear. The child's scream cut off. Silence. Then the wind. Not the northern wind, not the sea wind, a wind that came from the angles themselves. It carried voices, thousands, millions, all whispering the same line. Strange is the night where black stars rise. I woke on my bed, in the room, sweating, shaking. The scratching was gone, but on the floor, a single drop of blood, not mine, fresh, and on the wall, scratched into the plaster with tiny claws, a crescent moon, and beneath it, words. The Sabbath is not finished. I looked at the revolver. One bullet left. I looked at the dagger. Still hungry. I looked at the door. The scratching would return, and next time it would bring the Sabbath with it. Thomas Hale, North End, Boston. Entry unfinished. The play, the witch, and the shadow continue